Imagine a city where progress was not just a dream, but a reality. A place where black and white citizens lived and worked together, building a future of shared prosperity. This was Wilmington, North Carolina, at the end of the 19th century. A bustling port city, it was the state's largest and most vibrant metropolis. It stood as a beacon of what was possible in the post-Reconstruction South. But this beacon was about to be extinguished in a storm of violence and hatred. This is the story of the Wilmington Coup of 1898. The only successful overthrow of an elected government in United States history, and how its legacy continues to shape America today. In the 1890s, Wilmington was a remarkable exception in the Jim Crow South. The city was a hub of black economic and political power. Black citizens weren't just participating in the economy, they were leading it. There were black doctors, lawyers, business owners, and skilled artisans. The waterfront, the heart of the city's economy, was dominated by black stevedores who had successfully unionized for fair wages. Politically, the city and the state were governed by a unique alliance known as the Fusion Party. This was a coalition of white populists and black Republicans who had joined forces to challenge the conservative white Democratic elite. And they were winning. Under Fusionist leadership, public education was expanded, voting rights were protected, and black men held positions at every level of government. From city aldermen and police officers to federal appointments like the postmaster. At the heart of this thriving community was the Daily Record, the state's only black-owned daily newspaper. Its editor, Alexander Manley, was a powerful voice for civil rights and black empowerment. Wilmington in the 1890s wasn't a utopia, but it was a place where the promise of a truly interracial democracy seemed within reach. But this progress was seen as a profound threat by the white supremacist Democrats who had lost their grip on power. They watched with growing resentment as black citizens achieved economic independence and political influence. To them, the sight of black police officers arresting white citizens or black business owners competing on an equal footing was an intolerable reversal of what they considered the natural order. They began to plot a way to reclaim power, not through the ballot box, but through fear and violence. The campaign they launched was one of the most insidious in American history. It was a statewide coordinated propaganda war designed to terrorize black voters and turn poor white farmers against their black allies in the Fusionist coalition. Newspapers across North Carolina, funded by the Democratic Party, began printing sensationalized and false stories of black domination and crime. They used racist cartoons and inflammatory editorials to stoke white fears, focusing particularly on the idea that black men were a threat to white women. This was a deliberate and cynical strategy to dismantle the Fusionist alliance by preying on racial prejudice. The architect of this campaign, Furnifold Simmons, the state's Democratic Party chairman, made his goal chillingly clear. He promised to win the upcoming 1898 election, even if they had to choke the Cape Fear River with carcasses. The flashpoint came in August 1898. A white supremacist speaker, Rebecca Latimer Felton, gave a speech in Georgia where she advocated for the lynching of black men to protect white women. Alexander Manley, the editor of the Daily Record, responded with a courageous but dangerous editorial. He pointed out the hypocrisy of this narrative, noting that consensual relationships between black men and white women were a reality, and that often the real threat to women came from white men in power. The editorial was deliberately twisted and reprinted across the state, by white newspapers, who presented it as an outrageous insult to white womanhood. Manly was branded a monster. The Democrats had found their pretext. The propaganda reached a fever pitch. Paramilitary groups, known as red shirts and white government unions, began to march openly in the streets, armed with rifles and pistols. They patrolled polling places, intimidating and threatening black citizens to keep them from voting. They were essentially a private army for the Democratic Party, and their message was unmistakable. Power would be seized by any means necessary. On November 10th, 1898, 2 days after an election that was already stolen through widespread voter suppression and fraud, the white supremacists made their move. A mob of nearly 2,000 armed white men, led by a former Confederate colonel named Alfred Moore Waddell, gathered in downtown Wilmington. Their first target was Alexander Manly and the Daily Record. They marched to the newspaper's office, and when Manly wasn't there, they broke in, smashed the printing press, and set the building on fire. The flames that consumed the Daily Record were a symbol of what was happening to the entire city. But this was not just a riot. It was a coup. The mob, now a death squad, fanned out across the city's black neighborhoods. They hunted down and murdered black citizens in the streets and in their homes. Accounts from survivors describe a terrifying scene of gunfire echoing through the city for hours. People fled into the swamps and woods surrounding Wilmington to escape the slaughter. The exact death toll is unknown, as many bodies were dumped into the Cape Fear River, but historians estimate that anywhere from 60 to as many as 300 people were killed. While the massacre was underway, Waddell and his men marched to City Hall. At gunpoint, they forced the resignation of the legally elected mayor and the city council. By the end of the day, Waddell had installed himself as the new mayor, and the white supremacists were in complete control. The coup was complete. The aftermath was swift and devastating. In the days that followed, the new illegitimate government began a systematic purge. They banished prominent black and white fusionist leaders from the city, forcing them to leave on trains under armed guard, never to return. This wasn't just a political cleansing, it was an economic one. The white supremacists wanted to destroy the black middle class that had been the backbone of Wilmington's success. Thousands of black residents fled the city in terror, abandoning their homes, businesses, and property. It was one of the largest single displacements of a black community in American history. The city's demographics changed almost overnight. What was once a black majority city became a white majority one. The political consequences were just as severe. The new white supremacist legislature, now in firm control of the state, moved quickly to codify white power. They passed a series of Jim Crow laws and a new state constitution with poll taxes and literacy tests, specifically designed to disenfranchise African American voters for good. It would be more than half a century before black citizens in North Carolina could exercise their right to vote in any meaningful way again. The vibrant, integrated community of Wilmington was gone, replaced by a rigidly segregated society built on the foundations of a violent coup. The story of what happened was deliberately buried. For 100 years, it was called the Wilmington Race Riot, a misleading term that suggested a spontaneous clash between two equal groups rather than what it truly was: a planned violent overthrow of a government by a white supremacist mob. For a century, the story of the Wilmington coup was suppressed, a painful chapter that many preferred to forget. But silence cannot erase history. In recent decades, Historians, activists, and descendants of the victims have worked tirelessly to uncover the truth and bring this story to light. Today, if you visit Wilmington, you can find the 1898 Wilmington Race Riot Memorial. It stands as a solemn tribute to the lives that were lost and the community that was destroyed. But the significance of 1898 extends far beyond Wilmington's city limits. It is a crucial and often overlooked event in American history. It demonstrates how political violence was used to roll back the progress of Reconstruction and install white supremacy as the law of the land. It is a stark reminder that democracy is fragile and that the fight for a truly multiracial society has faced violent, organized resistance. The story of 1898 isn't just about the past. It's a lesson for the present. It teaches us about the danger of political propaganda, the importance of protecting voting rights, and the courage it takes to stand up to injustice. By remembering Wilmington, we honor the victims and commit ourselves to ensuring that such an event never happens again. Thank you for watching. If you found this story important, please share this video. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the history that shapes our world.